The United Nations was founded on a dream. After the horrors of World War II, the world yearned for peace and cooperation. The UN's Charter, signed in 1945, reflects this noble goal. It calls for nations to work together to solve global problems and prevent future conflicts. However, over time, the UN has strayed from its founding principles. It has become increasingly politicized, with certain member states using the organization to advance their own agendas. This deviation from its original purpose is most glaringly apparent in the UN's obsession with the tiny state of Israel. While the UN's mandate is to promote peace and security globally, a significant portion of its time and resources is dedicated to criticizing, condemning, and demonizing Israel with the most heinous accusations, many of which the UN has the gall to present as established facts. The UN's microscopic focus on Israel is jarring, especially considering the multitude of conflicts, human rights abuses, and humanitarian crises plaguing the world. The UN Human Rights Council, for instance, has passed more resolutions condemning Israel than all other nations combined. This obsession with Israel, while largely ignoring the world's worst human rights violators, completely shatters the UN's credibility and raises questions as to whether the UN does more harm than good. To understand the UN's bias against Israel, it is crucial to recognize the organization's inherent political nature. The UN is not a monolithic entity. It is a collection of member states, each with its own interests and agendas. These agendas often manifest in the form of voting blocs, where countries band together to support each other's resolutions regardless of their merit. One such powerful bloc is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC, comprising 57 member states. Imagine you're a country that wants to get its resolution passed. Do you go to the OIC with its 57 votes, or do you go to Israel with its 1 vote? And if you get that 1 vote from Israel, you can essentially kiss those 57 OIC votes goodbye. Let's talk about petrodollars and pressure. Adding another layer of complexity to the UN's dynamics is the influence of oil-rich Arab nations. These countries, with their vast wealth and control over a vital global resource, exert significant economic and political pressure on other UN member states who remember all too well the oil embargo in the 1970s that crashed economies. Still today, oil-rich Arab countries utilize their financial clout, including through bribery and threats regarding which countries will receive investment from their hundreds of billions in sovereign wealth funds. For example, a WikiLeaks release exposed Brazil's agreement to vote against Israel in return for access to these multi-billion-dollar Arab funds. Through economic extortion, Arab countries have been able to coerce countries into towing their line on their constant anti-Israel resolutions. And of course, one cannot ignore the scourge of global anti-Semitism. While political and economic factors undoubtedly contribute to the UN's bias, one cannot understand the UN's obsession with Israel without realizing the insidious role of anti-Semitism. Sadly, recent events have made it clearer than ever that prejudice against Jews persists, and that it often manifests itself through the demonization of Israel. Europe is the classic example on anti-Semitism. In Europe, Jews were subject to millennia of scapegoating, persecution, and massacres. All evils were blamed on the Jews. So it comes as no surprise when European countries jump on the condemnation of Israel train at the UN. Add the fact that millions of immigrants have recently entered Europe from Muslim countries such as Syria, where anti-Semitic conspiracies are taught from the cradle, and Europe is once again consumed by anti-Semitism. Member states also have a shameful history of appeasing terrorism. Palestinian terror groups have taken advantage of this weakness by extorting UN members to trash Israel. And by granting these barbaric terrorist groups a platform and legitimacy, the UN has only emboldened their extreme violence. In fact, several countries have made secret deals with Palestinian terror groups to provide votes and diplomatic cover at the UN in exchange for promises not to conduct terror on their soil. For example, recently unclassified documents show that after a series of Palestinian terror attacks in the 60s and 70s, including a February 1970 bombing of a Swiss air flight that killed 47 people, the Swiss government made a clandestine deal with the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO, to provide support in the UN in exchange for a promise to stop attacks on Swiss interests. But the UN, ultimately, has only the illusion of authority. Those countries which capitulate to Arab and Muslim demands to demonize Israel know they are not giving away anything concrete. UN General Assembly resolutions are non-binding. They lack the force of law and are simply expressions of opinion. In fact, the UN General Assembly has only one legal power. They are permitted to pass their own budget. While the UN General Assembly lacks legal power, that does not mean its resolutions cannot cause harm. With an automatic anti-Israel majority, resolutions sometimes wholly devoid of facts pass easily, which contributes to the delegitimization of Israel and the undermining of any remaining UN credibility. It's a shame, but the UN has truly become a modern-day Tower of Babel. Or, as Abba Eban, Israel's first ambassador to the UN, once said, "If Algeria introduced a resolution declaring the earth was flat and Israel had flattened it, it would pass by 164 to 13 with 26 abstentions."